Good morning, everyone. It's January the 31st, and we're doing our second edition of Peg Perry's Prognostications from Berkeley Springs. She's doing pretty good this morning, and I believe her talk today is going to have something to do with our first president, George Washington. So take it away, Mother.
All right. Well, I got the shock of my life when I was checking out first presidents years ago, because he wasn't listed as the first president. There were a couple before him, and then it comes to him. And I have to realize he's called the first president of the United States of America. And so I got interested in George Washington many years ago because Berkeley Springs always speaks about the spring in the center of our town, and they call it George Washington's bathtub. Why do they call it George Washington's bathtub? Because George Washington came to that spring, to that water. The other one that came there was Franklin D. Roosevelt. He had polio, and under his administration, in Bethesda, Maryland, the Bethesda Naval Hospital came about under his administration. It's interesting about water, because in the Bible, the pool they put them in for healing was called the pool of Bethesda. Bethesda, I call it. But anyway, going back to George Washington's bathtub. The reason that spring is so special is because many, many years ago, the Indians came from all over to that spot, to that spring. They called it holy ground. And all the different tribes there, they would not fight. They called it holy ground. Many of your routes today were really Indian paths. And those paths all came to this spot, to that spring, because they called it holy ground. Now, it's interesting because one day, Governor Manchin, he was governor, he's now senator, came to see me, and he took me into the park, and he says, "Tell me everything." So nobody was allowed in the park. I met him in the park, and we sat on the bench in front of George Washington's bathtub, and we're facing across the street, and nobody was allowed in the park. They had security all around. Nobody was allowed to come in that park while Governor Manchin was sitting there wanting to ask me questions. And he said to me, "Do you know something? Tell me everything." So I said, "Well, Governor Manchin, first of all, it's interesting because the name of our town is not Berkeley Springs. The name of our town is Town of Bath. Most people don't realize we pay our taxes to Town of Bath. But when things started progressing and the mail and everything, it got named after Lord Berkeley, the Postal Service, and that's how we got named Berkeley Springs, after Lord Berkeley. But the center of our town, the very center, is called Town of Bath. And if you look at little plaques along the way, it says Town of Bath. We're the sister city to Bath, England. And I said, "Governor Manchin, you know what's interesting? We're sitting here in front of George Washington's bathtub, facing across the street. There's a grotto there with Our Lady. Many years ago, people would come up to me and say, 'What are you Catholics up to now?' I said, 'I don't know.' In the churchyard was a pile of rocks and an old clawfoot bathtub. 'What are you Catholics up to now?' I said, 'I don't know.' The pile of rocks were cemented in. The bathtub was put end on end up and rocked around and mosaic tiled inside. Our Lady is actually standing in a bathtub facing George Washington's bathtub."
So that's the grotto that's
That's
There
the
on the
grotto. That's there. People
on Main
pass that,
Street.
but they don't know that. And I said, we're the sister city to Bath, England, and we have Our Lady of the Bath. At the top of the hill, local people do not know it. They go up the hill. When they go up the hill, there is a statue on the left, and it's a woman sitting on a rock. With her head bowed, she's crying. It's Our Lady of La Salette. That's France. But there's a lot of things that have been happening around Berkeley Springs that I didn't even know. However, most people do not know that George Washington had a vision of the Blessed Mother at Valley Forge in 1777. 777 is God's perfect number. But it was written up in the National Tribune in 1880 and it's about the vision of George Washington. And it begins, he said, I don't know whether it was owing to my mind or what, but as he was alone and involved in prayer, he said suddenly a singularly beautiful female figure came before him.
Now, was this during the time of Valley Forge?
Valley Forge was, when was the Battle of Valley Forge? 17, this was...
I thought this was about...
During that time.
This was a time where the men were freezing and he didn't know what to do,
and he was
praying.
Yeah. And suddenly, it said a singularly beautiful female figure came before him. She said, Son of the Republic, learn and listen. And George Washington was given a vision of the whole birth, progress, and destiny of the United States of America. But when the third peril comes over the Republic, help comes by way of divine assistance. In the third peril, she said, Son of the Republic, what you have seen is thus interpreted. 3 great perils will come upon the Republic. The most fearful is the third. The comment on the word third is help against the third peril comes in the shape of divine assistance. Apparently the second advent, passing the whole world united against her, will not prevail. Let every child of the Republic learn to live for his God and his union. With these words, George Washington said, I came from my seat and felt I had seen a vision where it had given me the whole birth, progress, and destiny of the United States of America. Let me just tie one thing in. If you write down the word Jerusalem, Jerusalem, the very center of that word is USA. And the United States now has an embassy over in Jerusalem under President Trump is getting this done.
So George Washington felt it was for the Union or for the Republic and for God,
It
right?
was for God. And
It's
this is
like
before he
President
became
Trump.
president. This is in 1777.
All right, well, this is the end of today's section, and we'll see you the next time.